everybody. Good morning. Welcome to Wroclaw. Welcome to Impact Fintech. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you so much to the organizers for having us and also for putting on this fantastic panel. I hope you're all having a great conference already. Before I even left the airport last night, I decided I was going to change my mobile payments provider, my Forex transfer app, and also the card I use for my overseas payment. There's a lot of fantastic people here, and I hope you all use the opportunity to discuss with each other. Anyway, enough about me. Let's get crack on straight away. Hopefully what we're going to do today and this morning is kind of dissect and break apart what this word fintech means and talk a little about what it means for you. Yoni, what does fintech mean for you?
For me, fintech is sort of like home, because when we started eToro in 2007, we heard two things. First, people tell me I'm an idiot if I think I can build a financial services company out of Israel, and because I have to be in either New York or London to do that.
Right.
And then second, we had endless debates for the first 3 years on the board. Are we a financial services company because we're regulated as a financial services company and we need more compliance people on the board? Or are we a technology company and we need more internet people on the board? Constant debates, and then suddenly fintech became a buzzword and everybody said, okay, we're a fintech company. No more debating.
That's an interesting word, buzzword. I mean, Carolin, do you think it's a buzzword? Or do you think this is a real trend? I mean, buzzword sort of, you dissociate it with a flippancy, a sort of fly-by-night idea that comes and goes. What do you think?
I don't think it's a buzzword at all, because we just need it. Looking at the financial services sector, customers expect a better experience, better products and services all over the place. And all the incumbent players, look at banks or insurers, have such a pressure on their margins and huge costs because of their legacy systems. They just need to automate their processes and digitalize their service offerings.
Wojciech, you run a bank. We just heard from two speakers that talked about fintech as a challenge or an opportunity for banks. How do you see it?
I see the fintechs of today, they're no different than modern banks, but they go without the regulators. And somehow they were able to skip the building thousands of branches, and they can store their data in Amazon rather than in their own data centers. So I think for the banks is a challenge, because I don't know of any single bank that doesn't want to be a fintech. Just how to get there. This is the challenge.
Can a bank be a fintech?
Sure. And then it's an issue of integration of two different clashes and cultures and the way that to organize after the acquisition, after the merger, after going forward. It can be difficult.
Sławomir, you're someone that's sort of been on both sides, if you like, of this divide. How do you see it? Sort of, is it banks versus fintech, or is it more blurred than that?
Actually, you may be surprised, but what I think fintech is all about using digital technology to create better, more convenient, cheaper products to make the customers happy. So fintech is both banking and startups. It's a lot of excitement today as fintech be equal startup. Fintech startups, it's not. It's actually more a challenge for banks, not fintech startups killing banks, but banks itself, not coping with the challenge of digitalization. That's exactly what last, let's say, Anne Bodin said, in one of the conferences, talking about reinventing banking. Reinventing means actually makes the retail banking de novo, new. And she said it clear. Bob Dylan had it exactly right. What he sang, if your time to you is worth saving, then you better start swimming, or you will sink like a stone. This is all about the time is changing for banking. For the startups, it's fascinating dream to disrupt the market, create a great company, and make the impact on the financial services. This is what it happens to me. 16 years ago, once creating, mBank as digital-only, internet-only bank in Poland. This is not only Poland, but you see what happens to Germany in the most conservative and protected markets in Europe. You have the bank with the name, for many of you, be unknown, like ING DiBa, being 10 million customers, third largest bank in Poland. And it happens in this room are two of top 5 CEO of the banking. This is, how the banks and the bankers, at least some of them, see the future challenge.
Yoni, I mean, you're someone that's not really in banking per se. I mean, do you think it always has to be in opposition, the two sides, or can they find a way to sort of coexist?
So we've, in the past 18 months, we've raised $30 million from 3 of the largest financial institutions in the world. So
Right.
Sberbank, Commerzbank, and Ping An. So we had the chance now of working with them. And I think what's really interesting, by the way, what's interesting is the term fintech is the Western term. The term in China is actually different, and I think is more interesting. It's called internet finance. Right. And the reason it's better because the internet culture is all about change and disruption. And finance culture is all about preservation and sort of safety. And those are by definition conflicting. But the need for us as fintechs to actually operate with existing banks is there because, for example, today we're launching in Poland our website in Polish and our platform in Polish. And for us...
Today?
Today, yeah. Oh. That's very exciting for me for my keynote. My Polish grandmother is very proud. But for us, for example, in Poland, nobody knows who eToro is. So for them to actually transfer money, whether it's $500 or $50,000, it is quite hard. But if we work with a local banking partner here, then suddenly we're able to offer a great, innovative social trading platform for users and the safety of a familiar bank.
Well, that's the point, right? I mean, fintech can't exist without banking. I mean, at the end of the day, there needs to be some kind of coexistence. Carolin, how have you found that relationship in what FinLeap does?
In both ways. So looking at our B2C companies we have in the portfolio, they all have a second pillar where they can grow through B2B2C cooperation. So a lot of them work with banks, as you do. A lot of them work with independent financial brokers and stuff. So this is something that really works very well to increase the customer base at affordable customer acquisition costs. And the second pillar is that we have our own bank. So what we saw is that for most of our fintechs, we weren't able to find the best white label bank that is fast and flexible enough. Right. So we decided to build our own bank, which is called Solaris, and they are probably the first technology company with a full banking license. Right. So this is where the scaling comes from.
And are you actively trying to make sure you don't become a bank? I mean, in a sort of old school sense, is that something that you do consciously? Sort of not become like the people you're essentially trying to disrupt?
It is a very good question. So I would say it resembles quite well in our founding team. So we try to combine a serial digital entrepreneur, someone who built businesses in fintech or any other industry, with a very experienced banker, 10, 15 years background in banking, solving all the legal and regulatory issues involved, and market experience, with the best tech talent in the world. By this, we can have the entrepreneurial execution, the industry expertise, and the tech stack you need to build great fintech
and a very efficient interview process. They put them both in the room. If they survive after a couple of hours, they're
if she drowns, she's a winner.
How do you know? Have you been there?
Wojciech, there's a lot of chat in the banking industry, or fintech, there's fintech that. Do you think old school bankers, and I'm not to sort of tar everyone with the same brush, but the traditional model, do you think they're paying lip service to fintech, or they really understand the need for it? Do you think there's sort of we must have a division that looks into this space, it sounds very interesting, it's good for investors, blah, 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 blah? Or do you think that there are many banks out there that really understand what it means?
I think 4 years ago, my answer to your question would be, it was a lot of pretending. So I'm sexy, I'm fintech, I'm gonna do this, and that. I'm gonna go to 2 or 3 conferences, show up something that never uses, and no one except the IT guys. And but that has changed.
Right.
So many for two reasons. For the last years, I haven't seen any public article in press and TV anywhere that was positive towards banks. So it was neutral at the best, or rather, and the same, but the opposite is for fintech. And it's very rarely to find a thing that is bad mounting on fintech companies. So the pressure comes from two sides, from the clients that are asking for the innovations. They want also to be sexy, nice, and basically good looking and have a good user experience. But also, I think, from a staff. 15 years ago, when I was working for BPH in Krakow, we could take any single best graduate from AGH, best programmers, and the place for them to go that was banking industry.
Right.
Now, forget about it. They're all in fintechs.
That's surely something that you guys all experience, right? The race for talent. I mean, how does that play out in a sort of real sense? I mean, are people drawn to the idea of fintech, or how do you make sure that you're attracting the best people? I mean,
Well, obviously, it's better to work at an internet or fintech company than a bank.
why? Just because there's like
Culture-wise, first of all, you dress lighter, you eat better, you drink more with more people, even your bosses, and it's much less formal environment. So it's by definition, internet culture is all about creativity and openness, and I haven't worked in a bank, so bankers, please excuse me, but banking culture is a lot about privacy and bureaucracy. Someone told me, by the way, a great sentence that taught me to appreciate banks. He said, bureaucracy 150 years ago was fintech, okay? Because that's how everything operates. That's how you know how to trust a big financial organization, and because they really master bureaucracy. So things fail less. But I think internet is fun. I mean, everybody knows internet is fun.
I mean, this is all about talent. What attracts talent?
Right.
And it didn't change actually very much. Even if you talk about millennials and the behavior and lifestyle, what talent needs, work hard, have fun, and make history. And as it is today, you don't feel like banks would, make history in the positive sense. That's why the talent looks after chances to change the world in the positive sense. And fintech and startups innovation is something which attracts talent and people and makes them, passionate and working hard, really, believing they have a chance to change the world, even if a small sense.
Is the money as good? Can fintech companies pay as much as banks?
Generally, the open salaries in technology are much higher than banking.
Right.
So if you're an 18, 21, 24 computer sciences guy, you're probably making more than an equivalent in the banking industry. But in technology, it starts high and sort of stabilizes there. So
Right.
there's no big fat bonuses. Where in banking, the sort of seniority, it starts very low, and then you get bonuses, almost limitless, capped by regulation.
But with the shrinking bonuses we see in banking, I think we can attract a lot of very senior people as
the
well
crisis
who see the value in equity, which is part of the conversation as well.
But I thought no fintech companies make money. How can you pay all this
Actually,
money if you're not?
just if I may, you can't really buy the talent and the brain. You can attract the people to work hard only if they believe it is worth to do it. And this is not about the money. It's about the topic you work and the culture you are in.
It's a lot about vision. So you see internet companies have a lot of efforts of defining their culture, their vision, their values. I know at eToro, for example, one of the values at eToro is enjoyable. We want our users to really enjoy basically investment management and trading using our platform. And I want my employees to actually have fun at work and outside of work with their colleagues. And I was sort of intuitively, I thought that was very generic. Like any CEO would want people to have fun. And then I talked to a couple of others and they're like, no, work is work. Work is no fun. I'm like, okay, that's different. So I think in generally in technology, people make a lot of effort to sort of crystallize their vision and values and also match between the vision and values of a company and the vision and values of its product, of its consumer experience.
Right.
Well,
Fun or work?
what I can say, the values and fun and these are very important, and the targets. But sometimes without the money, without the capital, they become a dream.
Right.
So
That's why we raise a lot of money from VCs.
you need actually both, and I think it's important the fight between the bank and the fintech for the talent. When we set up Alior in 2007, the deal with the investors that we had was quite simple. Let's build a bank, and 20% of the upside is yours. It's up to you how to spread among the team. So it was easy to build the values and target, and at the same time build a financial future for all of us involved. Now we are in CRD4, basically environment with the bonuses capped at twice the salary. So what I have is only the vision and values.
I'm values pay the rent, right? I mean, I'm shocked by what you said, Wojciech, about how there's never a good article about banks, and there's always good articles about fintech. Are we in a position now where everyone's getting a bit too giddy about fintech, and is that a good thing? I mean, are people getting a bit carried away? Are we building a bit of a bubble around this idea, and everyone knows what happens to bubbles?
I'd say yes and no. I'd say fintech is sort of nearing where the internet was in 99, 98 probably.
So 2 years before the enormous...
So a lot of people are now talking about it. There might be sort of a squeeze at some point because maybe too many fintech startups are getting too much funding.
Right.
But 15 years from now, we're going to look at today and say, wow, fintech completely changed everything we know about finance and money and how money is distributed generally in the world and global connectivity. So it's going to change the world as much as the internet changed the world. So it is a very, very big theme. But, like everything in the markets, things that go up, go down, and then go back up again.
And then come back down again. Carolin, what do you think?
I would add, most of us thinking about fintech look at these glamorous consumer-facing models out there in the market, needing a lot of funding to build a brand, to acquire customers at a high price. But there's another side of fintech, on the B2B side, so technology players being able to enable banks to automate their processes, digitize stuff, all around RegTech, anti-money laundering, KYC for consumers or enterprises. Great business models that are early on profitable, and by this sustainable business models that don't need that much funding. And we see a lot of activity in that space, but no one's really talking about it, to be honest.
Let's talk about it here. Talk about it, please. I'm really interested.
Yeah. So, for FinLeap, what we do when we think about new ideas, it has to fulfill a certain set of criteria. So does it solve a real problem of a consumer or enterprise? Is it technology-based? Is there a market where the margin is big enough to earn money with it and serve the customer better at a lower price, at a higher interest rate? And are we able to build the market leader in the geography where we operate, which is continental Europe? So if this is all set, then we look at really unsexy business model like digital debt collection or white label asset management for mid-sized asset managers.
Apologies if anybody's in that space.
Yeah, stuff like that, or working on KYC for enterprises, working on data and scoring models that are really able to get you a consumer loan immediately by getting access to your current account and analyzing your transaction, not only using a score from a credit bureau that is 3 years old. Stuff like that. It's really working well. Everyone needs it, and people are willing to pay money for it. So it's easy to fund.
Though I would say that B2B fintech is sort of evolving in its evolution, but I don't think we'll see revolution coming out of B2B fintech. I think revolution will come from the consumerization of finance. And when you think about, again, internet consumers and internet consumer companies, it's all about really optimizing the user experience for your target audience, for your user, and constantly looking at what they do with your app and optimize it and iterate it. And when what you do is you just sell a product to banks, then your customer is actually the bank or the financial institution. It's not actually the end user. So it's very hard to optimize towards the end user. So I think we'll see the big shift coming from companies that eventually focus on consumers. But I totally agree. There's a huge market also for just providing better services.
Are there spaces where fintech can't go? Spaces where the traditional bank will always be necessary?
I think it goes with the logic where the fintechs are attacking. The fintechs are attacking the space where the margins are thick and the competition is relatively weak. Maybe that's the reason why there are not that many fintechs in Poland, because contrary to what we were being told, I believe that we are operating on one of the most competitive markets in Europe.
Them I'm launching here today.
Well, and I think so. It's no wonder that the fintechs in Poland are attacking first the space of retail lending, and 2 or 3 of them are very successful. I think the payment, the remittance, investments, all are the areas where the fintechs have advantages over traditional banking. And to openly answer your question, I think that I cannot imagine any function of the bank, maybe the regulator, one, that the fintechs shouldn't and couldn't attack in the foreseeable future.
Would you guys agree with that? Do you think there's no space that fintech can't go?
I mean, financial services is a purely information-based product. Why in the hell shouldn't be completely digitalized then? So other than any other industry we've seen before, books with Amazon, cars with Uber, they digitalize a lot earlier. So why shouldn't be financial services being completely overtaken by new players? I mean, there are a lot of, let's say, commodity products where you can offer stuff from a technology company and not so much from a bank, but they would probably need as well regulation. So it's not only technology, you need the regulation. So I'm not so much a fan of this sandbox model that the UK people have or UK has. So the combination is the key. Scaling with the best technology and be compliant with the regulatory as well.
I think people sort of misunderstand the gap, this like huge gap, because finance today is an analog world. And not only is it analog, it's the purely digital world, right? Money is virtual. It's a virtual good. It's the biggest virtual good in the world. But banks have been working for hundreds of years to actually convince people it's real. Okay, so they're taking digital and saying, no, it's not digital, it's real, it's money, it's there, it's safe, right? And suddenly, we're now transforming this back into digital, and we want to drive it much faster. But the entire system, nothing is interconnected. Not globally, not locally. Like all of the services, everything is hard to connect. There are no APIs, there are no technology, infrastructure. So it's really building everything from the ground up. Like I have computer science as a background. I remember when I started the company, I automatically made all the reports in my CRM to actually calculate our revenues online. And when E&Y came in, I'm like, where do I send these reports? And they're like, no, once a year, you send them to us, and we send them to the tax authorities. And I'm like, Why don't they link to my database? This was like a 26-year-old CEO. And then you realize the world is just very, very fragmented in finance in general.
But just like, I mean, you mentioned Uber. Some people still like jumping in a cab on the street. Some people don't like to use apps. Some people might just want to go into a bank and touch and feel it and feel the money, you know, sort of understand what that means to be a bank.
I mean, just talking about banks vis-a-vis fintech as a startup, banks do everything what is financial services and fintech selected services. This is a long time discussion between, holistic view of financial services and monoline. What fintech do is very much monoline, payment, lending, and so on. So, like, what eventually a digital bank could create is a holistic view of financial services and the ecosystem, which is winning edge. Like, for example, payment. This is a long discussion in the banking industry, how much the customers should pay for payments and transfer. My answer was always nothing, zero. If you are, as a bank, if you are, just determined and put, transfers and payments with zero, then there is no fintech which could compete with you. Because the infrastructure the banks potentially have in place, once they know how to use it, is the same as fintech. So this is why I believe very much, that banks, at least those who understand and will be able to use digital in the right way, will be able to compete with fintechs as startups.
I think, by the way, that's exactly what sort of the Bitcoin and blockchain started to basically create, is the understanding that, wow, almost with no cost of infrastructure, there's now a global payment infrastructure that people can actually move money from one place to another with exchanges built on top of it, and like zero infrastructure, set of code written, that's it. So I think, it's a paradigm shift in the infrastructure level.
Would you agree with that? Do you think that?
I think that the whole discussion will be a little bit different in 2018, where the PSD2 and the API-based banking really emerges, because we are talking here, like old guys, for regular people, clients. They don't have a clue. Are they doing the business with banks or non-banks? We have to put the special advertising that your money is protected by some agencies, and this is the only differentiating factor. It's somewhat sad that the banks are second largest spenders in advertising, and the only thing that they try to differentiate from the fintechs is by the fact that the savings are protected. It's really weak. I think in 2018, 70-80% of the people on the market, if you ask whom they bank with, they will not differentiate between the banks and who's got the license, who's not, doesn't have a license, and this is a real threat for the incumbents, because it will be the touch and feel, it will be the easy to use, it will be the whole user experience around the usage of the product rather than who stands behind it.
I had some, yes.
I mean, regarding what you said, will it be the banks who transform themselves to be digital and offer the greater user experience, or the fintechs who will win? I would say, I would expect in the next 12 to 18 months a lot of platforms trying to rebundle all the product niche fintech players that we have in place. So, because I would expect that no one of us who are more or less enthusiastic about fintech want to have 13 different apps on their smartphone to manage all their finances, from the account, payment, consumer loan, mortgage, asset management, social trading, whatsoever. So guys who are able, and then I would say the fintechs are probably the faster ones being able to build those platforms, bundle it in an intelligent way with a big data and recommendation engine beneath, and the APIs to connect all the existing bank accounts and whatsoever the customer has.
And that will be done through M&A or through collaboration, cooperation? What do you think?
Probably both. I mean, there are a lot of fantastic fintech models with great technology out in the market who weren't able to achieve enough funding to acquire enough customers. So these are the typical ones who would be very happy to be integrated into
Right.
those platforms, either via M&A or incorporation.
Right.
Yep.
I'm keen to talk a little bit about regulation and governments. I mean, you hear not just inside the industry all this buzzword about fintech, but also from governments and talking about innovation and startups and trying to create more and more. How easy is it just to create? I mean, what countries have done a good job in terms of fostering innovation, and which ones could learn from it? Yoni, I mean, what do you think?
Well, I think, by the way, Cyprus is doing a really good job.
Cyprus.
Yes, I think all of the small governments in Europe are really doing a good job. So it's Malta, Cyprus, Luxembourg. And the reason is because the regulator is small enough to actually converse openly
Right.
with companies. The FCA has been doing also a lot of good work. But the difference is it's very hard for the FCA because the financial services ecosystem is so big in the UK. It's very hard for the FCA to sort of give discounts for a startup and to have all of the banks and all the financial ecosystems say, hey, this guy is getting something different. So it's much harder for startups to actually get sort of the added benefits of an open discussion and waivers or stuff like that, where in the small regulators, you actually can open this for discussion, explain your innovation and what you're doing. And then some of them is different. Some of the places we've seen is basically they accept cross-border regulations. So they say, you're regulated in the UK, okay, you can operate in my country, which is also great. And passporting, to that matter, I think the passporting in Europe is probably the most important thing that created fintech in Europe, and the fact that there are startups in Europe is the European passporting, which I hope now with the Brexit won't break.
So
I mean, if we talk about innovation, then you have to bear in mind what innovation is. It's actually do the same things in different way or do different things. If you talk about regulations and the regulators, they are always after, best practices. And best practices is do the same things in the same way. This is why, it's kind of, let's say, a contradiction when you want, promote innovation at the same time promoting best practices, which is doing things the same way and doing the same things. And by the way, it is not only about changing regulations. This is more about the attitude, how to use the existing regulations. This is how you said, there are different approaches in Europe. Let's see, UK, Germany, forget Malta for a moment, small countries, but the big and most conservative legal environments and regulators in Europe, like UK and Germany. If you take into consideration, UK regulator granting 5 licenses for challenger banks with cozy names like Monzo, Starling, Atom, and so on. Even Germany with FIDOR and number 26, then you wonder what's going on. This is exactly the change of the attitude. If you want to, let's say, more competition in the banking, in the financial services, if you want better services for the customers, you have to first not only promote fintech, is promote and introduce more competition in the banking sector. This is it.
I can comment. I think it's not which country in Europe is more open for the fintechs. I think the regulators are really supporting fintechs by stopping banks, and I think this is the greatest support that you can imagine. I mean, to the best of my knowledge, not a single of the Polish banks was able to convince the regulator to use the cloud for any of our functions. I think it will come in time, it must. But it means that in reality, it means that every single bank from the area where the cloud-based based technology is allowed to have an advantage, not to mention the fintechs. This is how it works.
And who is saying this? You know, the guy who started the bank with 400 million euro on the account in 2007. This was a time when you wanted to start financial services with a banking license, then you needed to have tons of money. And the change is that that the licenses I mentioned before were granted in a time when the entities had not more than 10 million or 10 million pounds or euro on the account. This is a change. You cannot say or tell the story about innovation and promoting competition if you need to start a bank 400 million euro.
Is it a question of regulators not understanding it and being just a bit slow on the uptake, or is it about regulators actively making life difficult for banks and trying to jump on this cool, sexy fintech bandwagon? I mean, what do you guys think?
I think, again, if we talked before about sort of fintech and culture in banks and then culture in startups, I think, and I really think regulators have a really, really, really hard job because regulation and innovation, again, those are almost conflicting. This is almost black and white. Okay, it's very hard to regulate innovation. Innovation is someone coming up with saying, "Oh, I have an idea. I'll build it and I'll launch it." And regulation says, basically, everything you do, please write a procedure to make sure that you follow up the procedure and you understand exactly what comes in and what comes out. So it's very hard to sort of find the right balance in between those.
Right.
And I think the first part is them understanding sort of the culture of innovation, what innovation means, why is it good for consumers, understanding internet culture, and for that I think that is going on with different regulators around the world, which is great.
Carolin, I think you want
I think it's a lot about getting to your point as well, talking their language, so translating it. And we solved it by just hiring people who worked 10, 15 years in banks and talked to regulators and wrote the processes and the manuals and stuff like
The
that.
difference between men and women. I want them to understand me, and she says I'll just teach them.
Yeah, and it's quite efficient. So we were able to apply for a banking license and received one in just 11 months. So just writing the stuff on our own. So we wrote the full complete application to the BaFin on our own with our own resources, and just hired a lawyer for some smaller pieces. And this works very well, and this is why we think that this systematic company building approach helps a lot of teams who would need a license for their business, let's say a factoring license, asset management license, to have someone we can provide them with speaking the language and translating the stuff, the innovation to their industry, and they're looking at it.
We're running low on time, and I'm keen to talk a little bit about Poland. I mean, how does Poland make sure it learns from the countries that are doing it right?
First thing is to talk and draw the right conclusions. And I guess Poland is doing a good job in avoiding mistakes. We probably it's not coincidence that we are the only country in Europe without major banking crisis, without major crisis in general. So I think there's something that we are doing quite well. But the pace of change is so is accelerating. That's why I think that the conversation and linkages between the regulators, the fintechs, the banking world should be faster and faster. And maybe I repeat myself, but I think that the PSD2 will really make these three words combining, including, and the common regulation will may emerge.
I mean, is the government listening here, Sławomir?
I mean, Wojciech, just even there is a PSD2, the attitude could be such that there will be differences in different countries. So, like for example, with KYC, you have the European regulation on KYC, and see Poland, and Germany. You have the Polish company providing live chat for mBank. and the same company providing, the same product for Commerzbank in Germany, which is used not only to talk to the clients, but to identify the clients and make an authentication in the KYC process. This is a huge difference. This is how you can, let's say, leverage digital in order to acquire customers, not only to serve existing customers. This is, and when you ask, who does it good, or, when you see in terms of results, UK, especially London, is actually a champion or one of the centers, if not the center, of the fintech industry in the world. In terms of number of employees and evaluation of the companies and so on and so on. And see what was the London and financial services and an FSA a few years ago, before Cameron announced, we want to be a center of fintech industry in the world.
Right.
It has changed a lot. This is what I'm saying. It's not about to talk, it's about to do things which are necessary. And fintech is actually capital, as you rightly said, is talent. We have talents in Poland. We have demand, because demand is coming from the customers. Demand is coming from institutions like banks who understand what fintech is and what digital is. And last, what lacks us is just the two components: regulatory attitude, not better regulations. Let's live with those regulations which are in place. Let's change the attitude. It's not about sandboxes. Sandboxes, is like the children or kindergarten tool. It's about the serious thing, how to promote innovation, financial services as a tool to make the customers happy.
You have a fantastic. Well, time is up. It's been a really fascinating conversation. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Wojciech, to Carolin, Yoni, and to Sławek. Thank you so much. And thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.